This is Einfach gelöst, the it-agile podcast. I'm Urs, your host, and today's guest has done a lot of interesting things. He's been an aerospace engineer, he's been a software developer, a vice president and a consultant. He is a firefighter and a mountaineer. And maybe most famously, he is a co-author of the Agile Manifesto. I'm very happy to welcome to the show Mr. Jon Kern. Jon, maybe you can introduce yourself to our audience in your own words. And I would be very interested to know how you got from being an aerospace engineer to being a software guy, because most aerospace engineers, and my best friend is an aerospace engineer, hate software with a passion.
That's funny. Well, first off, vielen Dank, Urs, for this opportunity to speak with you and your listeners. Yeah, it is an interesting journey. I've definitely had a blessed path to where I am, from aerospace research and development, testing and engineering, like cruise missile engines. Then this is the sort of the transition. A little bit of seeing, hey, can I get this different piece of information on the control panel screen, in the test cells, because it was altitude chambers. And I see, some guy come in, fiddles with something, and suddenly I see this new information. I was like, what did you just do? He said, oh, well, that's software. Huh. So I like to joke, as engineers, we want to solve problems and, go to the moon. We don't want to have to invent something. So I think of it, engineers are very much solution oriented. So that was a fascinating little glimpse into, this might be useful to me to be able to change something. So I count that as a little bite that infected me with, what is this software thing, and kind of ballooned from there to flight simulation, man in the loop. I put a lot of people through flat spin training. Well, I shouldn't say training, familiarization in a centrifuge, -6 Gs, eyeballs out, putting, like the real Top Gun type people through what you saw in the movie. That was legitimate. And we were trying to help figure out how to prevent that, how to recognize it, how to get out of it. So yeah, it was a really fascinating career. A lot of great mentors along the way. But yeah, that led me to my own company and led me to working even before my own company with Peter Code and object modeling and TogetherSoft. We got an opportunity to kind of take that company in a different direction and sort of wrestle it from a funny origin story that it had and turn that into a really fantastic UML modeling tool, which I thought I would retire at this company, which is kind of humorous looking back. I don't know. 3 years later, it felt like 10. 3 years later, we sold to Borland and, kind of had an exit strategy. Yeah, I think that the quest was different ways to solve problems to help provide value at the end of the day. I've been continuing to do that ever since. It was during that time period, 25 years ago, while I was at TogetherSoft with Peter Code, that got the opportunity to go to Snowbird.
So what got you there? I mean, you're one of those people who were agile before there was agile, lightweight methodologies, these things. Engineering is not very famous for doing things lightweight, even when it comes to software. What brought you that shift?
Yeah, that's a funny point. You mentioned it. I guess I was always kind of pragmatic, and the blend of XP and feature-driven development with Peter Code and company. I think that was probably a lot of it, and just being in the right place at the right time to be offered to go there. Certainly, I mean, I still have magazines in the attic of my barn that were Uncle Bob Martin, right? I mean, he was like, wow. I mean, I'm a youngster there, but a pretty outspoken one, because I had a lot of experience with heavyweight processing, government, DoD, mill standards, for all kinds of stuff. And I had published my own lightweight methodology in the 1995, I think. So, I was kind of already on that very pragmatic, probably because of my exposure to heavyweight. And I'm thinking, I'm a taxpayer too. This is stupid. Why are we doing this? Because I was doing Defense Department work prior to creating my own company. And I think it was probably that, where this is dumb. This is just, doing process for process sake's got no value. It's somebody from on high telling people, I don't know. I think it's my penchant to just try to get the thing done, get results, get value. Don't waste people's time and money. I was in testing and T&E and research and development and not production. To your point about, wow, engineers, you're kind of usually more, persnickety and a little more
Thorough.
thorough. Yeah. And so, yeah, you have a point. I guess, fortunately, I missed that part.
Brilliant. So you got an invitation to Snowbird, or you organized the thing yourselves? How did you get
Well,
there?
the way that I understand it, and I'm sure it's probably written somewhere, but I believe like Alistair had this idea. Bob Martin had an idea. I think maybe Bob was thinking we could create something. And I think Alistair was also maybe coincidentally thinking, and somehow they connected, and then they had sent out mailings from what I recall. It was originally called the Lightweight Methods, and you can go on my Flickr account and also Agile Uprising. I gave them my, like, this might be a confession that I save things and I'm a pack rat. It might, maybe I have to look out for being a hoarder as I get older or something.
You
But
mentioned your barn.
yeah, exactly. And there are still magazines from back in the day that I couldn't throw out that have Bob Martin articles in it. And I had the paper that I think Alistair created, and I had my notes, like where I learned about for the first time Scrum, or from Ari Van Bennekom, the DSDM. So you can see my notes. They're published. They're on my Flickr, and certainly I can give you a link.
Cool. That would be nice.
But yeah, it was originally called the Lightweight Methodology or something like that, right? Because we were back then, there was the heavyweight methods, like the military standard 2167 that I was forced to follow for some things. But of course, I'm not doing something stupid. I'll just work with the client. That sounds like one of the values, right? I'll just build a rapport. I'll just try to do the right thing instead of doing something silly. So I think the idea was to maybe find some commonality between all these different smaller, less popular, less marketing muscle, like Rational Unified Process had a lot of marketing behind it. So it was a big heavyweight process. It's just like SAFe.
Mhm.
It's the same. It's a well documented. It's a treasure trove of let's say like a software process knowledge book or something like that. Rep was like that, but also a behemoth. And if you didn't tailor it, you're just doing a lot of stupid, excessive process, kind of like SAFe. I would guess SAFe should be tailored, but you go to a SAFe training and they say, no, then you're not doing SAFe. That's illegal, or something. I don't know. That's what one trainer told me.
Actually, Scrum trainings sound very similar these days.
Yeah. And that's just, I don't know. It's not pragmatic nor agile.
Uh-huh.
But I think that's where I sort of couch it as a little bit trying to combat that big marketing, and trying to find what did our methods have in common. So a bunch of object modelers, mostly, not everybody. Some people weren't that, but a lot of folks who are used to this sort of thinking, getting together, explaining what they do, how they work, being able to distill from that the gist of what our practices were. That's how that's how I thought of it when we went there, was to try to find what are we doing, what's common, how can we try to maybe see if there's something worth sharing.
But instead you went skiing, and Jim Highsmith already had it figured out.
Yeah, well, that was another funny thing. I do remember two choices. One was the Caribbean island Anguilla, which the only island I've ever been to in my life, and that was for my honeymoon. So I was like, well, I've been there. Really hard to get to, and really small. I mean, I picked it because I didn't want to go to like the common places. Like, all right, where's the most unusual place to go? And that was it. Probably not anymore. Or skiing in Salt Lake City, which is really easy to get to. I mean, my alpine climbing buddy, his father's Swiss wife, her boss, this is a strange story, always went to Utah for powder skiing, right? I'm thinking, I always remembered that. I learned that when I was a teenager. And then I said, well, yeah, let's go there. It's faster, easier, cheaper. And I know Alistair and Jim, I think, lived there at the time.
That was at least, yeah.
They are amazing skiers. Yeah, incredible. So those photos that you see also are up on my Flickr, but those photos are for me taking pictures of them skiing and at the top of Mineral Basin. And I hadn't been skiing for quite a few years because we were just starting skiing. I actually flew from Salt Lake City to Montreal because we were going to start teaching our twin girls how to ski that year. So I literally didn't even go home. I flew right to the next little ski vacation with the family. Our son, he had been skiing, but we kind of stopped while our girls grew for 5 years until we could get them. So yeah, we decided instead of the warmth, we decided to go to the snow. Some people skied, some people just hiked, some people snowshoed, and some people just sat in the bar. But yeah, that's my memory. And it would be funny to to get everybody's recollection and see how close things are.
Yeah, I half expected all of you guys to come together this weekend when it's the 25th anniversary and see what's
Yeah,
what.
I was willing. We are doing something tomorrow, noon Eastern time where I am with Alistair at 6 p.m. I can send you that link too. But yeah, a little get together with Alistair and myself.
That's nice.
Yeah, we ended up not doing anything in person. Yeah.
I met Alistair last time I met him, it was 12 years ago or so. He came to Germany for some conferences and it was interesting to talk to him with his very adamant point that while Scrum is the dominant method at the time, it's just an implementation of Crystal.
Oh, that's even funnier.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll see my notes. Probably said something like, "That's interesting. It looks like an outer loop project management system for whatever you put inside of it. Software, I don't know, building a house, whatever." That was my, just quick thumbnail summary
Of Scrum or of Crystal.
of Scrum.
Yeah, right. I was talking to Mike Cohn and Tom Mello the other day. That was very interesting because they had this very flexible view of Scrum. So it becomes whatever you need, and through retrospective, through flexible process, it could get into Kanban, it could get into DSDM, depending on your team and your needs. Today, I'm a Scrum trainer by trade, and people just ask me, give me the perfect Scrum, the one I don't need to ever change again. And I'm like, well, no, that's not the way it's meant to be.
Yeah, and I get it. That's human nature, right? The brain's, you hear things like the brain wants to minimize energy use. Okay. Well, I don't know. If you're only ever doing the same thing, well, even if you're only ever doing the same thing over and over, I bet your process could still change over time. But yeah, that's sort of the kind of a fundamental flaw that somehow has taken root because maybe it's the easy way out. I'll just implement it. I'll implement the one best way and never have to think again. Yeah, good luck. And your
Yeah.
job will be overtaken by, the bots and something else. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the corporate way. It's easy to codify. It's
Yes.
easy to document. It's easy to train all people in doing it exactly the same military way and just be done with it.
Well put. Yes, I do remember. I did take the product owner, product manager, whatever the one tiny 2-day safe course that happened to be in the area. Because I was going to go talk to a company who was doing some big room planning and stuff like that. And it was hilarious because I didn't tell the guy who I was because it doesn't really matter, but he could tell that the way to change arguments is to change the language, right? It's a classic. If you read Friedrich Hayek's book, The Road to Serfdom, or conservative and liberal is completely swapped from what it is today. And so there was something like product manager and PA, I don't remember, whatever it was, even if I thought I knew that I should flip it, I still got it wrong. And he just kept finding that there was the way I learned, the way I call things, the way that, I would label whatever that thing was the opposite and safe. And I passed the test exam, never did pass the real one. I said, screw it, don't care. I think I was, missed one, but it was that. I kept getting tripped up by the stupid change of, something that I had long ago embedded in my brain. I just couldn't, pretty funny because I just couldn't shake it. Even when I know, I'm thinking this, it must be the opposite. Nope. You were right. They're one of those things. I was starting to outsmart myself. And somebody asked, can I change in Taylor and do X, Y? He said, no, because then it's not safe. Maybe Dean Leffenwell would say, well, no, you can change it. He might be magnanimous, but the trainer knows probably, no, I have to preach what's in the book. And then he also told me, exactly to your point, big companies management love this because it's prescriptive. It's trainable. It's teachable. It's by the book. Don't need to use your brain, even though, of course, you still should. But yeah, you're right. He said that's what appeals, and that's why people buy it. And then, 2-3 years later, when they figure out it still didn't budge the needle. Sometimes then they abandon it because oftentimes, I don't know if I should say that. Well, I will say this, and I like, sometimes I exaggerate for effect. So this might be one of those times. If you're so screwed up as an organization that safe looks like a good idea, maybe you deserve it. In other words, it's super expensive. Some people even admit it. I want to get an RTE. I want to do this. I want to get more in my resume, right? Become more valuable. Yeah, nothing to do with, is this better for the company to achieve their success or customers' value or shareholder value? So it turns into a lot of training, a lot of all kinds of excesses before you can see if it's working or not. So my sort of corollary to that is I can only hope that if you're that screwed up, this does bring a sense of order. This could snap you into some kind of at least consistent shape. It's a little bit like crappy architecture. Hey, I want to wander over here. It looks like this. I wander over there. It looks like that. Over here. Well, it looks like 3 different teams designed this software. Oh, how'd you guess? Because it's obvious if you know what you're looking at, that kind of thing. So if you maybe snap people into shape, get them in, and then hopefully they wean themselves off of it and learn how to become more agile and do it more pragmatically and shed over time some of what I think is excess heavy weight. So that's kind of an idealistic model that might work of how to, like I said, if it looks good, then you must really be screwed up. Like you can't figure out. So anyway, those are all they don't apply to everybody, of course. And those of you listening out there, I'm sure they don't apply to you. But they might to some people.
All right. So while we're at corporates, you mentioned Togethersoft and selling to Borland. Now, Borland rang a bell with me because they are very famous for outpacing Microsoft back in the day.
Yes.
Like Quattro Pro, so the legend goes, was developed 50 times faster or was 50 times less effort than Excel was when it came to the transition from DOS to Windows, maybe. I'm not entirely sure about the facts. Do you know anything about that?
Not necessarily about that, but from the Microsoft, like those days of DOS and Windows and whatnot, there was like OWL, Object Windows Live or something like that. The Borland model for OO and Windows was far superior. I remember using both. Was it MFC? I don't even remember now. And I was like, yes, one group got it right. And it was beautiful and elegant and very useful because I remember building Windows apps on both, and the one just like the Microsoft API or SDK, whatever the heck they called it then, sucked. It was a horrible model, horrendous. And Borland was leaps and frogs and a much superior design architecture, much easier to work with and produce results. So that story is what I do know, and it comports with what you described as them applying that same thing to a hunk of software, like the spreadsheet. It certainly corroborates what you say, but I never heard your story, but I'll happily just start telling it now.
I think it was in some book or some interview. I can look it up where it came from.
But you're right. So Borland, Turbo C++, because I started coding, in Fortran initially. Matter of fact, oddly enough, the real-time F14 aerodynamic model was Fortran. I remember completely re-architecting parts of it because we ran it on a 60-bit cyber supercomputer, and there was somebody really maybe too smart that programmed parts of it early on. And, I had to learn hex code debugging. I had a special calculator. And I remember going, no, we need this to be engineering, like reveal intention and use normal aerodynamic terms. So not 60-bit twiddling that like turn that into a method, right? So I did a lot of crazy refactoring and re-engineering parts of that to make it more readable and legible and maintainable. Then I went from that to real-time modeling. I mean, like literally the aerodynamic model had to basically run at, I think it was 20 times a second, 20 hertz, something like that. So it was pretty intensive to be able to run. So I learned early on as a young aero guy learning software about real-time software and blowing frames and things like that. So that went through a lot. Then I looked at back in the day, Visual Age, which was Smalltalk.
Oh yeah, Smalltalk, original.
The original, and sadly, it ran like a pig on Windows. So all right, Turbo C++ it is, and it ran fast. But in 2008 or 9, whenever Corey Haynes came by my house one time on his funny little road trip and slept over, the rest of my family were out, so it's just that. And it introduced me to Ruby and Rails, and Ruby was like, wow. This is the OO I wish I had back in the day.
Yeah,
However,
nice.
Andy Hunt did come to me and say, hey, do you think you could add Ruby to Togethersoft? Because we did C++ and Java. So that was that was at the time of the manifesto. So I look, I'm like, Ruby, what's Ruby? Oh, wow, that's really niche. Like you and like 10 other people are using it back then, right?
I didn't know Ruby was that old. I thought it was more of a 2005 development.
It definitely was before 2003. He asked me, and I'm thinking it was either at the manifesto, probably not, but it might have been. Um, I kind of wish I had because once I started using it, it's like, wow, this is how adults should program because it's none of that, none of that stupid syntax crap.
Did you ever do something really big in Ruby? Because there's this anecdote of Jack Dorsey of Twitter fame that they originally built in Ruby, but at some point, I think in 2013 or so, scrapped it all and went to J2EE.
Wow. I went the opposite way from J2 from J2EE to Rails. Yeah, I've heard that anecdote. One of my heroes in the field is DHH, David Hennemeyer Hansen, who of course is the master.
Of course, yes. He built the original Ruby on Rails when he was a 37 Signals building Basecamp. Right.
Yeah, and he's still involved with it. And I would say there's a lot of other anecdotes today that show the power of Rails is still kicking. So, like anything, there is no one size fits all.
Yeah.
Who knows what Jack and company ran into with it, but yeah, it's a fantastic platform. That's for sure. I have a firefighter app. The one that was J2EE, and then I got tired of that because it's like, yay, another 5 classes. So you get really good at either creating a template or, code generator because you got all these classes for one concept.
We can all blame Eric Gama.
Yeah, the gang of 4 patterns in it. And certainly the Rails I love. Rails, when I uncovered it, I was like, who had the guts to build this? Because that's essentially the model that I've used ever since working with Peter Code. Built a huge IBM manufacturing execution system in C++, using essentially that kind of a model, except it was all by hand. All of the, let's say, the pattern implementation was through making sure, code reviews like, dude, why'd you add inheritance there? No, get rid of, it should have been this way. And making sure that same kind of model view controller and all the boilerplate stuff where you don't make any money on that was as consistent as possible. And when I saw Rails doing exactly what I had to, I probably have the diagrams here somewhere. What I had to labor over manually, I was like, wow, that's a lot of guts to have built that. And so I've been a fan ever since because my world has long been the domain model is king. That's your money. UIs come and go, databases come and go, but you make your money on, do you understand the problem domain? And for whatever problem it is you're trying to solve. And then everything else is sort of changeable as time goes on. But usually the slowest moving part is often your business model. So, so Rails and the way that I've been developing since early 90s to mid 90s was when I was doing that kind of development. And then I saw this miraculous thing called Rails doing just that, but in a very clean, way better than I built manner.
Yeah. Speaking of DHH and Basecamp, there's another guy involved in that story, Ryan Singer, who was their chief strategist for a time. And he came up with a really interesting process they call ShapeUp, which was apparently the Basecamp development process for a time. So that's something I really like. It's a very user-focused, very, very problem-oriented way of doing things. If you happen to be a small company which is directly ran by their owners with nobody to interfere and who have technical expertise to design things.
That's a funny set of caveats, probably pretty decent one.
But it applies to Basecamp.
Yeah, and I did read that book recently. I'd say within the past year, and it resonated tremendously because
right.
I have a very similar, and I almost would say slightly easier. Maybe I should write it up one day.
Yeah, do.
Approach that's, and so you bring up, is it only valid for what you said? That's a great question because that's most of my experience. The IBM project where I really cut my teeth with domain models, a consistent architecture. We probably had 20 devs maybe. So it's still not huge. 3 years, probably 200 to 300 problem domain classes because an MES system is, like a bunch of major modules that in and of themselves are pretty big products. The whole, what is our process? The factory floor, what's the process? That's a non-trivial chunk of the code. Or how do we define products or bills of material, right? So it's a well-known, MES is a well-known paradigm. Like if you go look for, how can I get a manufacturing? Actually, it's like ERP, it's a well-known class of systems. So I submit that the Agile approach that I've taken since the mid 90s, is a lot like Shape Up, but possibly maybe, I think it's scalable because it's more about getting the lay of the land understood to just enough depth, but not too much. And that's part of the thing that's probably the hardest to train people to, get people like, I can outsmall you, or trust me, like when it comes to product development, I can make something even smaller. That's part of how do you stop people or AI? Because this is something fun to play with that I've been smitten by the replit bug. But yeah, it's how do you keep things, like AI. Okay, let me run and do more than you asked for. No. And it's the same thing with humans.
Mhm.
It's really, most important thing is to help folks build a different mindset, because you can always add more. It's child's play to build something overcomplicated and to build too much depth of features long before you need them. The true skill comes at being able to, I don't know if it's Zen, but to be able to step back and be brave enough to show less than you think. I often phrase it, I want you to think of the smallest thing you can do for this particular feature that you want to give to a customer, and do something slightly less, and I want it to be uncomfortably less. I want you to feel uncomfortable, because believe me, you need to find the edge, because most people's uncomfort level is nowhere near mine.
Yeah.
That will overbuild because they think they need it, or they don't get a second chance, or,
Yeah.
well, better get it all done now.
That's this military engineering mindset, actually. Under promise, over deliver. Wasn't it Kent Beck who said, if you are not embarrassed by your first release, you've released too late?
Could be. It would make sense. I can hear him saying that.
Yeah. So speaking of military mindset, this is a long shot maybe, but you being deep into aerospace engineering and the military, did you ever have a chance to meet Colonel John Boyd?
No.
Too bad. You know who he is?
Yes. I did work with a lot of fighter pilots. One of my favorite guy, his name is Magic, and a Marine fighter pilot, Force Phantoms, close air support, F-18s. He was Top Gun. Just amazing dude. I was mostly Navy TAC Air. I had applied to one of the academies, but because of my eyesight, couldn't be a pilot. So I was like, all right, shucks. Probably a good thing. I don't do well with authority. Well, it might have been bet for the best, let's just say. But I almost met Chuck Yeager. It's a funny story. We did a crazy research project for head-up display symbology. And that's another case where I wrote some C code, actually overclocking the PC chip to get real-time millisecond resolution, because by default it was only 53 milliseconds, if I recall. This is stupid that this is still in my brain from that long ago. But it was a cool little experiment to be able to, friend or foe, good guy, bad guy type thing, and what symbols, what worked better. So it was all about head-up displays and, recognizing the enemy, all that kind of crap. And so I get this funny phone call one day in, my office, my engineering office. I thought it was like a prank call. Hey, hello, is this Jon Kern? Yes, well, I'm blah, blah, blah. And you just won the Harry S. Salmon Award for, great technical articles for the Society of Experimental Test Pilots. I have no idea who you are or what that is or what you're talking about, right? It was really funny. Anyway, it turned out somebody lifted the I forget if we published it in IEEE or anyway, they lifted the paper, put it in their little, it's like a, SpaceX. It's like I almost want to think it definitely had an X in it, but in their little publication, quarterly publication. And so the members of the Society of Experimental Test Pilots voted that the best technical article of the year. So me and my buddy, you have to get on, the zoot suits, the tuxedos, and we go out to the place where they hold the Oscars. I don't know if they still do that, but, Beverly Hills or something like that. Hilarious. Chuck Yeager was going to be there, but he got stuck in Alaska.
Not too
But
bad.
there were other super famous people, not us. A couple of we had to go up on stage, and I was like, oh my gosh, really? Like, you're sitting next to people that were talking about building rockets, and someone piloting the space shuttle to fix the Hubble telescope. And then there's us who wrote some stupid article, and it was pretty funny. So we almost met somebody famous, and we did meet, I would say, a few famous people at the time, but nothing like Boyd.
Too bad, because there's so little about him. I mean, he has this really, real great legacy, the things he thought about, the things he left, but there's absolutely no writing. There's a
Really?
badly encoded talk of his, which on YouTube, which is the one thing you can watch. And then there's by one of his associates, Chad Richards, I believe, there's a book about his methodology, but that's about it.
Wow. How about that?
I'd love to know more.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get back to Agile. So Snowbird happened, and now we're 25 years later. Agile has a huge impact on the world of work. Things have since changed since the late 90s, and by now for many companies, Agile is a default way of working, or at least what they believe is Agile. So what do you make of that? Probably you didn't expect it, but what do you think? Why did it come to this?
Well, I think we may have touched on it earlier when, maybe the part of the human condition is to make things simpler and easier. The shortcut, a 2-day course. I don't know whoever came up with the idea of the certification. Brilliant for making money.
According to my cone, it was Ken Schwaber because somebody wanted to buy Scrum and you had no idea what to sell.
A book, services. Anyway, to each their own. Good for them, right? That's the beauty of capitalism. You don't have to pre-plan it. But nonetheless, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's not the problem. The problem is the system's reaction to it. So it's more of a suddenly it's like we lost the plot at some point. Rome fell, right? Our own countries can fall after a time. You can dilute the original ideas that made things great. So I think it's a case where the easy path sort of took over, and suddenly, it was good that it brought more people into the fold and gave them maybe something to do, because there's nothing wrong with it, the Scrum or anything like that. Like, there's lots of ways to succeed. But the fact that I still go to conferences and talk, and when I ask who's read it, it's like not everybody puts their hands up that read the manifesto. Maybe you might want to start there. I don't know. Just a suggestion. So to your point, there are people coming out of college that know about Agile. So it is no longer a new thing. It is the thing. And it might just be, maybe it'll enjoy a renaissance. Who knows? But those who get it, where agility flourishes, business flourishes, and customers flourish, and stakeholders flourish. And, so it's hard to get people to notice something, maybe, and to try to, because I would say it's the hardest process, if you want to call it that. It's the hardest methodology. It's the hardest mindset to adopt, because you cannot, so to speak, relax. You need to always kind of maintain some sort of partial attention, vigilance. In my experience over the years of running teams and building products, very, highly successful products, the hardest thing to be is the product owner in front of a highly agile team. They move so fast and swiftly and quick because, as I mentioned, I have a sort of a very holistic approach to pragmatic agile and how to get teams and architecture and things moving. It's a little bit like, I remember designing a seaplane in my senior year, or it's like a motor, speedboat. They have steps underneath, like little, if you look below, there's little, ridges that show like steps, and it's the wetted area. So in the beginning, you're sunk in the water, full drag. But as you get going and as you start to build some of the architecture, you're up on the second step and less wetted area, less drag. So that's kind of like Agile. And then, you start to get more things in place, and pretty soon you are running fast because you've reduced the friction. And that's all, that's once exhilarating and at the same time really hard to keep up with.
Yeah, that's the thing. No, back in the old ways, I'd say there was somebody who told me what to do as an engineer, for example, as a software engineer. There was a project manager who told me, this is your task, go do it, report back on Friday. And I went and did it. And now there's this self-organized team thing where we figure it out on our own. And it actually requires so much more discipline. And then there's this thing that Alistair called osmotic communication, where I have to have my ears open all the time to know what's what in the team. And if I worked on it, I am to speak up on my own, and nobody's going to ask me, but they're all going to blame me afterwards if I don't speak up. And all of these things, which are much more people skills than technical skills.
Absolutely. And the things not in the manifesto, speaking of technical skills, we expect you to have good architecture, good technical skills, right? That's kind of a given. There are things in there to help give feedback loops. I do not think we purposely put the bullets of the first page in the order that they're, I can't remember like, what the thing about the people, the individuals and interactions that should be first. I don't think don't think that happened. I don't know. The cool thing, I think one reason why nobody remembers everything is because it's only famous now in the room, right? I mean, in the room, we're just drinking beer and going skiing and then meeting and having ideas and then talking and going skiing and eating and drinking, right? I mean, hey, and I jokingly say this won't be true, but just as a way to illustrate it, Ward Cunningham's leaving. He's the guy who did the wiki and C2. I remember we collaborated there.
And he did the original website, didn't he? The agilemanifesto.org.
Exactly. And a little wiki where we were talking about the principles, I think. But I jokingly say he's got he's ready to go to the airport. He's got his suitcase and he's, holding the door as he's about to leave, and he sticks his head back in and he says, "Hey, you want me to publish this?" And we look at each other. Yeah, why not? We created four values. Might as well. I mean, again, this is February 2001. The internet's crap. Like, who cares? But, that's not a true story, but that's a way to say that nobody knew that this was going to happen. Nobody knew that this is suddenly going to, like, I wonder if Thomas Jefferson knew the Declaration of Independence was going to light a match and strike a resonant frequency in the hearts of mankind for not only just then, but centuries later. It's a really humbling and wonderful thing that happened, and it's crazy where we are now.
Well, all the better for you to have been there.
Yes, it's really, as I mentioned, it's humbling. Especially, I noticed, I would say the U.S., UK, it seems it's a little more passe, so to speak. But I remember at a certain point traveling to India or Eastern Europe or other later adopters, that they had the fire, the passion, that, like a little bit like what it was like in the beginning in the U.S. Wow. That's this pitchforks resonating, like ding, people are getting it. They're excited, motivated. It's like, yes, this describes what I couldn't conjure up, right? It's one of those things. When you read it, you get it, which is also a good friend of mine, Daniel Markham, pointed out years ago to me. One of the blessings and the curses, if you understand the manifesto, if you grok it, you don't need it because you live it. It is just a way of being. It just makes sense. It resonates.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand it, what do? Like, that's kind of his point.
Give me perfect Scrum.
Yes, there's no start here. There's no step one. There's
right.
So that's the challenge.
Yeah, Alistair famously coined this shuhari thing, which was very famous in my circles, like very, very aligned agile to martial arts, and said you first you do the forms and then you interpret for a bit and then you just improvise. I'm a martial arts guy myself. My Sifu once said, so don't worry about the form. In the end, the form is formless. That's exactly this with Agile.
Yeah, and that's for certain mindsets, that's a hard thing to hear and digest, right? To make, what do you mean? But I thought I had to do this just right. And I'm obviously not a martial artist. I only see it on TV. But yeah, like even that simple sentence makes sense to you and me. Guarantee it doesn't make sense to everybody. What do you mean? Formless form. Yeah. It doesn't, what do you mean form doesn't matter in the end, but that's what we start with. Yeah. So it's that kind of thing that you need to sit and reflect, read more, or maybe a lot of times the way that I try to help with teams is to help them experience it by, my colleagues and I at Adaptivist, we've done some crazy workshops with different teams, from normal business people to like special operations command, but really powerful workshops in person is best to really bend the mind, because it is up here and there are ways to grow your mind, and there are ways for us to help walk you to the edge, make you like, oh, like what that simple sentence you just said is one of those, it makes you stop, it makes you think. And that's kind of what's needed to push beyond. Like even my one buddy, Jon Turley, points out, even the concept of behavior-driven development or test-driven development, like I think it's completely natural and beautiful and perfect. I've kind of been doing it. I remember even showing Bob Martin with TogetherSoft in the room in Snowbird, a version of TDD using the UML diagram, because it was, code to model, model to code. I mean, and even showing him like I can sort of write the test first, and anyway. But that concept, what do you mean you write a test before there's any code, especially behavior?
It won't run. That doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. Yes. And so giving someone that, like it's sort of like moving them to their developmental edge that's uncomfortable, but not so far that you break them and they just check out. And anyway, we have techniques to help get a team there within 3 or 4 days. It's fantastic to watch them go. Some individuals go from like, wow, this is really great to like, oh, this is, oh my God. And to see what it takes. I don't know if there's an easier way, but that way of experiencing it, I think, is one of the best approaches to trying to truly understand what it means to have agility flourishing. And it's a really interesting world, the conundrum that is the manifesto.
So, with all of that being said, with us covering the past and now the present and how to get people get to Agile, what do you think the future holds for work or for Agile in specific?
I have been using via Replit, like Claude code is, Claude, I think Opus or whatever is inside Replit. I was flying down to the Special Operations Command to do this workshop. Normally I have a toy project, the game of life, and something where we can do BDD and things like that as part of the workshop, just to get to whet their appetite in a simple problem domain, right? So I was looking for something other than an installable. Well, here's my Git repo with you install it and, you run a few things and BDD will just work and stuff like that. But still, that's a risk because you got to install it on the devs' laptops in the workshop. So I was looking for something in the cloud and I found Replit. And on the plane, I created the stupid app in like less than an hour. This is freaking stupid. And I've been on a tear ever since. In the face of using Replit to create various apps already, some fun ones, like an art criticism machine, because my dad made a funny machine in the middle 70s that is, 4 little dials with 10 pieces. It's wood, but you spin them and then it makes a funny sentence that pretends like you're an art critic. Hilarious. It's really funny. I just used it yesterday at a famous Barnes Museum in Philadelphia that has great works from Monet and Rousseau and Renoir, and just insane. Admittedly, that's trivial. No database. Awesome. But deployed and connected to a domain that I bought. All I can say is in the age of AI, you better understand agility even more so, because I believe what this kind of a product allows me to do is accelerate my ability and my skills, because I also keep it at bay. Sometimes it gets stuck and I use Grok to help unstick it with something. Other times I see it doing duplication, doing something I didn't quite right. But because I know better, and admittedly, knowing better, it's in duplication or not. Well, if the thing's doing it, do you really care? It'll just do it. I don't know. It's a great question, right? Maybe I don't care, but I kind of do, but maybe not. Like it's a good philosophical question. At TogetherSoft, for example, we reinvented about every 18 months the complete code base. Who does that?
Yeah.
Anybody do that? Well, that's right. Basecamp, they would also run multiple versions because why make people change? But most people don't. Most people build this big, huge monolith and just grows and grows and grows. So that's why I care, because, there's a little bit of me says I know better than allowing duplication, and it's easy to ask it to fix it. So I think in the hands of skilled users, it's a force multiplier. Now, as hard as it was to keep in front of well-oiled agile development team and product architecture as a product owner, it can be even more exaggerated if I had to guess. Like, good luck shipping less. It's the specter of, I already see people overbuilding, and AI is going to make it really easy to overbuild. So I think it will also accentuate if you don't know what you're doing. It'll happily do that too. I've had cases already where I might have done balsamic mock-ups to vet the idea that's in my head, or taking from the product requirements to something. Now I just freaking do it in Replit. Let's just build it. Let's just try it. And I don't like it, I throw it away. Don't even care. Replit and Claude have helped me do iterations much more quickly and not be so married to. I think it's going to be a little rocky probably until people figure out the ways of working. It's an awesome way to pair with business. Like that's what I've done I had somebody at Adaptivist from marketing, and, she wanted X, Y, and Z. So I'm like, well, let's just build it. Let's see what it looks like. And we'll go grab that data and make it easier for you to find stuff out in this world of different services we provide. And let's just try it. And it's cheap and easy. And if we decide to do nothing with it and try something else, don't even care. And you just can't hold a candle to any other approach. Like, I can't imagine doing that with a group of developers. That would, taken forever. Not forever. It's a new way of working, and I think it's going to be some bumps in the road, and some companies will abuse it because that's just what companies do. It's a faster way to learn. Teach them about architecture. Still, I think fundamentals are required to, if you to do it well, but you can
Yeah.
still do it. And you can do it
Yeah.
cheaply. So yeah, who knows? But there's definitely new calculuses going on in my head about things that this has changed my approach, and it changed how I think about
Yeah.
development. And it's a brave new world, and I'm happy to be in it. It is so much fun. It's insane.
Yeah, it's a great teacher I've experienced, because there were some software engineering things I've never put my hand on, because now I'm out of software engineering. By now I'm a consultant. I can only break things there. And now my wife is facing some issues with the client and wanted to try something. Okay, maybe I'll have a look. And went over to Gemini and just prompted my way around, and suddenly I grok the platform. I know what's what, and now I can fiddle with the code because there is something to deal with, instead of going line by line and going through API docs and so on. That's really cool.
That's a wonderful example. That's a beautiful first person anecdote. And I think I don't like titles and roles and divisions of labor and stuff like that. Why can't I do it all? Nope, only a front end engineer can make the component. What are you, nuts? Yeah, geez, get out of my way. That whole front back end divide, I detest, just because I might want an expert, like a UX expert or a database expert here and there. I might want an expert to help set up a pattern. Like, I'm just a nut about being consistent. Rails, right? It's a framework. My manufacturing execution, everything was built the same way. It wasn't like this part of the app, the UI is done differently than that. So AI, again, breaks that down. To me, it's a full slice. You can still have a separation of concerns, but you can have consistent patterns throughout. So yeah, you bring up a great point that now I can ask it about React or Angular or something that I don't really know about, and I can learn from it some of the patterns and then have them repeated. So yeah, I think it's going to be really fascinating to see what happens, and I'm sure there'll be bumps and bruises and great successes, and hopefully some, teachable moments. But it's a brave new world.
Teachable moments indeed. Thank you. All right. So, John, finally, is there anything you are working on the world should know about? Some cool project of yours, some experience you made that you want to share, some nonprofit, anything you want to put out there for people to know about?
Speaking of nonprofits, I did just come back from Guatemala. I go at least once a year, sometimes more. My wife has been leading volunteer groups down there for more than 10, 12, 15 years, something like that. And we support a girls' school, and as well as an orphanage, as I mentioned. And the orphanage has built a kind of a vocational school, VOTEC school, as we might call it here in the States. And, we support an industrial sewing program there, and they're going to be starting up welding. And they're also going to be starting up, and this is the part that I'm like, ooh, maybe we can start up like some cute computer things. And I've often thought of, what if I could just, go down there, set something up, help. A long time ago, I reserved the domain, something like Agile Software Institute. After I visited a company that was trying to like, hey, would you become our head of engineering, whatever, I forget what. I said, I don't know. I'm skeptical. Let me just sit with your teams for a few days. I was like, I'd sooner grow a team from babies. It's like, oh man, the kind of I could see it that there's, like just clashes and some toxicity. And like, I do not want to inherit that. And I remember thinking, imagine setting up a cool company, an Agile software, where people came in like the old days. You interned, you were an apprentice, you learned under folks who've been doing it. And then you can help with real projects as we do real work for money. Like, it's a combination of, hopefully it pays our way and pays your education. So I've held this idea. This is a long time. I should look, when did I get that domain? I'm a squatter. So I've often thought about that, and it's like, oh, that would be a fascinating. But treeforhope.org is the 501c3 that we do some of it under. The orphanage is its own thing. Yeah, that's at once a great grounding to go there. We also support the village, and we support a Mayan elder center a little further away. But you come away after Christmas from all the materialism and all the kind of the stuff that's fun when you're a kid and things like that. and you go, it's a great place to get grounded. And it's a great place to have a lot of fun with kids and do some good things. So I would say that's kind of the passion project that the computer part has me thinking, yeah, I wonder if there's a way, yeah, to help.
Thanks for sharing.
You got yours.
I'll make sure to put a note in the show notes that people see the link. Great. Okay, Jon, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been a wide range of topics and it was good fun. Thank you very much for spending so long with me and for being on our show.
My pleasure, Urs. Anytime.